all doing today? Yeah. How are we doing? All right. Thank you for humoring me. Okay. I am super, super happy to be on this amazing stage today. Not only because it's my first time in Spain, and I love hanging out with the Spanish product community, but also because I get to talk about my favorite topic, cats. I don't know what's written on the agenda, but we're talking about cats. Now, this was me. I know. At 3 years old, I believe this was my 3rd birthday, I was holding my mom's prissy, stuck-up, white Persian called Juliette. And that's really where my infatuation with cats began. Now, I'd like to think that under all that hatred and under all that fur, she did actually like to hang out with me. After Juliette, we got a decidedly less glamorous cat, and in a stroke of absolute genius, decided to call her Black Juliette. And as you can see, I still wasn't very confident on how to hold a cat. Around the same time we got Black Juliette, my sister got a beautiful Norwegian forest cat called Hobie. Here, he is seen on the most 90s couch you can possibly imagine, ringing in the millennium. And then we got Poppy. Poppy is a cat I will fondly remember for having more bravery than sense and for nearly falling off our roof. Now, Poppy was the last family cat we had. And right after high school, when I turned 19, I decided to move to Scotland, where I got my husband, where I got my degree, and where I got this lovely accent. Now, I was only meant to stay in Scotland for 8 months. And during those 8 months, I didn't have a cat. And it was the first time in my life I didn't live with an animal. And it was super strange to me. But as those 8 months came and went, and as I realized I wanted to stay in the country, I wanted to study and work there, I had a new goal on my agenda. And that was to get my very own cat. And so, Lizzie, or Elizabeth Pussington, came into my life. Now, Lizzie I found on a local classifieds website for £25 with a ton of accessories. And this is actually the picture from that classified website. And on January, was it 2009, I finally got my very first cat. Now, Lizzie has been in my life since I was 20. I know her longer than I know my husband. And I've known my husband for a pretty long time. Lizzie was there when I wrote my undergraduate dissertation. She was there when I got my first tech job. And, of course, she moved countries with me. First to Italy for a year, and then finally to Berlin. So I think it's pretty fair to say that Elizabeth holds a pretty special place in my heart. Now, I moved to Berlin about 8 years ago, and as I moved to Berlin, I thought, I know, I will integrate, and I will do as the locals do, and I will get a badly planned tattoo from a complete stranger. I thought it was a really nice way to honor this animal that had been with me all of my adult life. Instead, I got this. Now, this tattoo was an accumulation of rash decisions, the sort of politeness you only get from growing up in Britain for nearly a decade, and a desire to live my new Berlin life to the fullest. And I hated it. You know how people say if a decision is easily reversible, you should just go for it, so you can always deal with the fallout later? Well, this was the complete opposite of that. Not only was it permanently etched into my skin, a removal would be nearly impossible because of how thick the black lines are and because of the coloring. But over time, I did grow to a kind of fondness for this tattoo, because it did act as a constant reminder that mistakes do happen and that you do have to live with them. And I always ended up thinking about how strangely fitting it became, because as my career progressed into product operations and then into coaching and consulting, my mission has always been to tell people about the mistakes I have made so that you don't have to make them. And with that, let's get started, and let's actually talk about product operations. Now, let me see a quick show of hand. Who here actually has a product operations title? There's one person. I see you. Yes, amazing. Who here thinks they do a lot of product ops work, even though they might not have the title? Okay, there's a few hands. Excellent. Who here doesn't really know what product ops is? All right, that's what I thought. So let's start with a little refresher. The Product Operations Manifesto, because of course there is a Product Operations Manifesto, defines product operations as it empowers product organizations to collectively, effectively, and efficiently drive the most meaningful outcomes for customers. Simple, right? Okay, maybe not so simple. So let's get more concrete for a minute. Broadly speaking, our mission is the following. We empower product organizations to achieve product management excellence. Sometimes I also like to define this as giving product managers the tools, frameworks, and access to data they need to do their best job. In short, I'm an enabler in the best sense of the word. I want to give you everything you need to succeed. Now, the thing about product operations is that it can vary wildly by company, because inherently we are there to remove barriers to excellence. But what those barriers look like can be different at every company. Over time, some things have crystallized to become common product operations responsibilities and tasks. Right? The first line here, tools, processes, and data. If you look up what is product operations, it's highly likely you will come across those top three. But some of us might not be doing some of these things at all. Some of us might be doing things that aren't on this slide in the first place. However, it doesn't matter what our day-to-day looks like, because we all are united by one common goal. And that's to create repeatable systems for high-impact work. It's our goal to have a product organization run like a well-oiled machine, one in which all the parts seamlessly fit together, one where work becomes easy, even though the work itself is complex, one that runs without friction, without drama, and without fuss. Now, this has been my mission for the last 4 years. And honestly, it's not an easy mission. There are hundreds of different ways you can get it done, and often you only figure out in retrospect whether you were in the right place, on the right path. As you might have seen, I'm no stranger to mistakes, and my career in product operations has been no different. And true to my mission, I would like to tell you today about 5 mistakes I made in product ops, so that hopefully you won't repeat them. So let's get started. Number 1, assuming I wasn't in product operations. Now, I'd like to get one thing super clear right off the bat, and I'm going to say it, and then we're going to move on, because I think there are quite a lot of interesting opinions about product operations flying around. Arguing whether product operations is valuable is a moot point. Product operations exist wherever products are made, whether you are aware of it or not. Right? Let's go back to this list of tasks and responsibilities. This is nothing new. This has always existed. Product operations is a byproduct of doing product management. Now, whether you're aware of it, whether you're doing it strategically or not, whether you need to do it strategically or not, is a different question. We haven't magically conjured up new tasks. By rolling these things into one specific function, we are saying we recognize that these tasks exist, we recognize that they are valuable, and we recognize that it's valuable to do them strategically and holistically. Now, usually when I talk at a conference, something magical happens. People come up to me after the talk and they say, listen to you talk about product ops. I think I've been doing it my entire life. I just didn't know it had a name. And it was exactly the same thing for me. That's really how my product ops career started. In retrospect, looking at all of the tasks and responsibilities I was handling as a PM, a lot of them were product operations, right? Tool implementations, being that one person that decides their team is now going to work differently, and being that trial phase kind of team, improving how we communicate across the board. If we don't have dedicated product ops resources, it's up to each individual product manager and leader to make sure you unblock yourself. But here's the problem. Without being aware of your own involvement in product operations, it's hard to do this deliberately. And that's a direction I wish I had recognized earlier. Product operations is something you do on a scale, from absolutely directionless to strategic. And at the very, very bottom end, you're not even thinking about it. You're just getting work done. And you know what? If you start out there and that's good enough, by all means. Further on, you have fighting fires when and as they arise. Most companies are here with their product operations. At the super strategic end, you really get to ask, what kind of product organization do we want to become? But further down the middle, you might have dedicated product ops resources, but maybe they're operating without a strategy because they are stuck in firefighting mode, because maybe they're too junior, or because they've just started. I want you to be in the middle. I want you to be directional with the product ops work you do. You're already doing this work. You might as well do it coherently. So how do you know, or how can you get there? Well, there are a few different things. Number 1, make your product ops work explicit. Whenever you're doing something that feels and sounds like product operations, raise your hand and say, I am doing this because this. Assign an owner, both to the direction, and that will probably be one of your product leaders, and to individual work items, because no initiative dies faster than one with 0 or 2+ owners. Check in often to find that kindling that could start a fire, right? Once you get out of firefighting mode, think about how can we prevent fires from happening in the first place. And start small. Be realistic about what you can do on the side of a full-time product management job. No more than one major product ops initiative per quarter. Mistake number 2. Assuming I didn't need to show my thought process. Now, this one is 100% based on real events. So I joined a company as head of operations for product and engineering, and one of the first things I was told is, we invest a lot of time into this product and tech newsletter internally, and nobody reads it. And I was like, okay, I can figure it out. It's a pretty standard product ops mandate. Let me start. And we're starting with low readership. So I start digging around a little bit, I start investigating, and I read this newsletter, and I realize that even for me, it was incomprehensible. There was so much tech jargon and so many made-up abbreviations that it would have been impossible for anybody, let's say in a sales team, to figure out what the actual meaning of this is. So I dig even further. And we realize that this thing is hosted on Confluence, a space where few people outside of product tech actually have access to, and if they have access to it, they weren't even aware they had access to it. Let's keep going. Now, the newsletter was actually not the only way teams were communicating with the rest of the organization. Every so often, they'd get some interesting experimentation results, and they would share that with the company. Ad hoc, at will, and in completely different formats. And at that time, I was like, let's take a step back. So I looked at the calendar of one of our heads of product, and she was in like 4 to 6 weekly syncs every single week. And I was like, okay, what's this one about? Well, this one's about talking to sales and customer success about the roadmap. Okay, yeah, makes sense. What's this one about? Well, this one is because there were some people who wanted to be in the earlier sync, but we don't want them to tell, we don't want to tell them everything, so we created a second sync. I was like, What's this third sync about? Well, that one is just for a fraction of the people in the other 2 syncs, because we need to go really deep on other problems. And it just kept spiraling out of control like that. So I went to the people who were in those 14 syncs, and I was like, why are you in all of these meetings? Aren't you just getting the same information throughout? And they told me, we are in all these meetings because even in those meetings, we don't get the information we're looking for. We get a roadmap at the beginning of the year that we all agreed on and we all understand, and then the product teams seem to do something completely differently. So it was like a scavenger hunt for information. Sales was siloed off from product to boot. They hadn't gotten a product demo in about 6 months, and they were finding out about new features during the demos they were giving. Same story with customer success, who was not able to deliver good support. And last but not least, my CTO, who I reported to at the time, tapped me on the shoulder and went, by the way, can you condense this entire newsletter into like 4 sentences for our board? And the whole thing was an entire mess. We needed a communication strategy overhaul. To me, this was absolutely clear. But the thing is, this is what it looked like to the outside world. I come in, I say, oh, nobody reads our newsletter? Okay, well, the answer is quite clear. Scrap everything. Now, how do you think that looked? How do you think that felt for the people who weren't even sure what I was doing as a brand new hire? Now, this is easily the biggest mistake I think I made in product operations so far. Because not only did I lose time trying to work backwards and help them see what I was seeing, I lost their trust. To me, the problems were crystal clear, right? I was deeply embedded in all of these things, but nobody else was seeing what I was seeing. Now, if you think you're in danger of this happening, here's a few things you can ask yourself. Now that I know more about the problem, how has my approach changed compared to what I initially communicated? Number 2, is everyone aware of the information I have uncovered? Does everyone have the same amount of information? And last but not least, if my proposed solution has changed radically, with whom do I need to get buy-in again? I had buy-in for creating a new newsletter format, for maybe shouting about it a little bit more. I did not yet have the buy-in for a communication strategy overhaul. Mistake number 3, assuming a new tool is the answer. Now, one day, our group's CPO, got in touch with me and he was like, Antonia, I have the perfect task for you. We need a road mapping tool. Now, most days, I would have been like, yeah, okay, sure, let me investigate. I'll, look at a few competitors. I'll compare pricing. I'll compare features. And I'll get back to you with a recommendation. What he didn't know is that I had just come off a huge Miro implementation with hundreds of concurrent users. I'm not going to spare you the details, but it was painful. So instead of going, yeah, okay, I'll take a look, I went, okay, why? And the longer we talked, the more obvious it became that we did not need a new road mapping tool, because he wasn't trying to solve a tooling issue. He was trying to solve a visibility and transparency issue. Now, many people think that introducing new tooling is easy, and that could not be further from the truth. This is what some people might think getting new tooling looks like. You identify a problem, you buy a subscription to a tool that solves that problem, some people do some stuff, and then success. You have successfully solved your problem. This is what new tooling actually looks like. You identify and you validate the problem. You identify and prove or disprove possible solution hypotheses. A new tool is just one of many possible solutions. You select a tool based on success criteria you've hopefully defined. You purchase that tool or a subscription to that tool. You learn about the administration. You set up the tool. You share licenses. You educate people about the tool. You integrate and connect it with your existing tool stack. And then you get to maintain the tool, the information within the tool, and the licenses indefinitely, forever, until the end of time. Ask yourself these 3 questions before you jump into new tooling. If I wasn't allowed to purchase a new tool, what else would I do? What's the quickest and cheapest way in which I can test the solution? Many companies are more than happy to give you a demo account. Make liberal use of that. And last but not least, if a tool does happen to tick all of our boxes, who does what? And I really want to stress this. It's an immense effort to introduce new tooling successfully. Ask yourself, is it really necessary? Mistake number 4. Assuming everyone cares. Now, this is the most common interpersonal issue in product operations work, and it's one that's actually not often talked about. But here's the thing. Product operations is fundamentally about change, and you cannot get people to change with you if you don't pick them up where they are at. So ask yourself, what are the voices that are in the room when you're trying to affect meaningful, positive organizational change? Is it maybe this guy? Another transformation? Come on, we just had one. But we already tried this. How is this time going to be any different? Finally, somebody that will turn this ship around. I've been waiting for years. Maybe you get this person. Sorry, I really couldn't care less. I'm way too busy with what I'm doing. Or you get this guy. Here's a list of all of the things we're doing wrong. I look forward to your daily updates. Now, in product operations, we work with the world's biggest variable, and that's humans. But the thing is, you as a change agent are just as human as the people around you. So ask yourself, how are you contributing to this narrative? Or you may be this person, right? This was me. when I was doing the communication overhaul. This is so obvious. Why are we even discussing this? Well, this worked at my last company, so let's just do it. I already have the evidence that it works. Or maybe you're this person. I can't wait to prove them wrong. Or maybe you're at risk of falling down the rabbit hole. I wish I could do only this and nothing else. And lastly, you have this guy. I don't think this will work, but I have to do it anyway. You have to remember that no two organizations are the same, and no two people have had the same experience. And when you're experiencing pushback, ask yourself, what got us here? Resistance never comes out of the blue. It might predate you. It might be about things that happened 2 companies ago to someone else, but it's never a non sequitur. People don't just wake up one day deciding to be assholes and deciding to be the most difficult person you'll ever work with. And it's in those moments when you might be the most frustrated, it's important to show up like a human. So ask yourself, can I learn more about why this person might be acting the way they're acting? What worries do they have, and how can I address them? And last but not least, if this continues, let's have a frank conversation about how important product ops work is to the organization today. Now, this final mistake is one I consciously decided to make very early in my product ops career, and is one that I will continue to keep on doing. And that's assuming people are ready to have this conversation. When I first started my first product ops job, I was delighted to finally be able to focus on the things I found most exciting, to finally be able to ask all of those uncomfortable questions around why we are doing the things we are doing the way we are doing them. Now, the interesting thing is that when I started in product ops, nobody really gave a shit. Like, nobody really cared. Nobody had any opinions about the validity of my role and my function and my job. And I'd like to mention a few power dynamics that are inherent in doing product ops work, because again, it's important we understand the environment in which we operate. Are you here to tell me how to do my job? And are you here to take the work I enjoy most away from me, right? If I had continued to be a product manager and somebody introduced a product ops person into my company, I would have probably had these 2 reactions. How do you contribute to the bottom line? Super important at the moment. Why are you doing something that I'm responsible for? This is something that I'll often get from product leaders. And how is this time going to be different from all of the other times? And people won't tell you these things explicitly, but you will notice them. And the thing is, absolutely, it's true, not every company needs product operations. That is not what I'm advocating for. But we need to get better at supporting the people that do product operations work in our organizations today. Because make no mistake, there is always somebody doing product ops. So instead of asking ourselves, do we need product ops? Let's ask ourselves, how can we support the people doing product ops today? Instead of asking what's the monetary value of glue work, let's ask, how can we measure organizational effectiveness? Instead of asking, why do we need to waste time on this, let's ask ourselves, what happens if we don't? I was always the kind of product manager that would get so frustrated at ineffectiveness within my organization that I would just do it myself, right? I would inexplicably become the Jira admin wherever I went, because nobody wanted to touch that with a 10-foot pole. If you're that person in your company, make your work explicit. Because only by surfacing product operational work can you give your company a choice. Will you let the undefined systems of collaboration drive you? Or will you drive the definition of your collaboration systems? Now, I've spoken a lot about mistakes, spoken about assuming I wasn't in product ops, assuming I didn't need to show my thought process, assuming a new tool is the answer to everything, assuming everyone cares, and finally, assuming people are ready to have this conversation. And you might think that it's overly negative to focus on mistakes only, but I think there's great power in not getting things right the very first time. Because every time you make a mistake, you learn. Before I leave the stage, I'd like to leave you with one final lesson. And that's that even the most permanent mistakes can be turned into something great. Now, a couple of years ago, I found a tattoo artist that I incredibly resonated with, and that was willing to do a cover-up for me. So, Elizabeth finally got the royal treatment she deserved, and I got a lovely family portrait of our little cat family. And just like that, my cover-up is just one of many mistakes I'll happily wear on my sleeve. Thank you.